Welcome to the At-Risk After-School Program Operations Training. This is the second in a three-part At-Risk After-School Program series presented by the Oregon Department of Education Child Nutrition Programs, or ODE-CNP. During this training, we'll present an overview of the operation of at-risk after-school programs. Some of the details will apply to all child and adult care food programs, and others will be specific to at-risk operations. For more information about the subtopics, please reference the associated CACFP Center Policy Manual chapter. This training will cover the purpose of the CACFP At-Risk After-School Program. We'll discuss the types of meals that can be served, briefly discussing the CACFP meal pattern. We'll also review record-keeping requirements and some special situations. The purpose on screen is from USDA's CACFP At-Risk After-School Care Handbook. The At-Risk After-School Meals component of the Child and Adult Care Food Program, CACFP, offers federal funding to after-school programs that serve a meal or snack to children in low-income areas. At-risk after-school care centers provide much-needed service to their communities. They give children a safe place to go after school and nutritious food that gives them the energy they need to concentrate on homework and join their friends in physical, educational, and social activities. This purpose lists several keywords that guide the regulations and guidance. It's clearly a meal reimbursement program, but the purpose also talks about care centers, activities, and areas served. Let's start by talking about the meals. In child nutrition programs like the CACFP, reimbursement is received for serving reimbursable meals. In order for a meal to be reimbursable, the meal pattern for the program must be followed. On screen, you can see an image of the CACFP meal pattern chart for ages 1 through 18, specifically snack, lunch, and supper. The at-risk after-school program does not have a different meal pattern from the rest of the CACFP. While all children 18 and under at the start of the school year are eligible to participate, the primary meal pattern used for the after-school at-risk program is the ages 6 to 12 and ages 13 to 18 meal pattern. These meal patterns are identical. The amount listed on the chart is the minimum portion size. More food can be served, but the reimbursement remains the same. The program serves a maximum of one meal and one snack per day. This can be any meal. However, on school days, they must be served after the school day ends. The CACFP meal patterns rules differ from the National School Lunch Program and Summer Food Service Program meal patterns. Let's review the particulars. Remember that supporting documentation is always required. In the CACFP, whole grain-rich items need to be served at least once per day and identified on working menus or production records. Remaining grains served must be enriched. Grain-based desserts are never creditable in the CACFP. Only minimum portions exist, so serving extra is allowed. Milk is required to be served at each meal. No milk variety is required. Ages 2 and up require unflavored skim or 1% milk to be served. Ages 6 and older allow flavored skim as well. All substitutions must be documented, including those for creditable milk substitutes. In addition, a valid meal preference request or medical substitution request must be on file. Breakfast cereals and yogurts must meet sugar limits. And offer versus serve, or OVS, must be pre-approved by ODE-CNP, but is allowed for all at-risk after-school sponsor types. OVS for CACFP differs from NSLP in that no fruit or vegetable is required to be taken. All meals must be served and eaten in a supervised congregate setting, and only one vegetable, fruit, or grain may be taken off-site. While this is not an all-encompassing list, these are some important particulars to keep in mind. The CACFP At-Risk After-School Program can operate any day of the week during the regular school year. Frequently, sponsors who operate the summer food service program also operate at-risk programs, and so serve meals year-round to their participants. On school days, meals and snacks must be served after the end of the school day. Sponsors are welcome to adjust their meal times on school days with approval from ODECMP. For some sponsors, this means that supper is served at lunchtime, as care is provided the full day. To request this approval, explain all requested variations in the comments on the applicable site information sheet in CMP Web. One meal and one snack may be claimed per child per day. Sponsors must offer enrichment or educational activities each day that meals are claimed. These activities must be open to all. In all child nutrition programs, including the CACFP, a variety of documents must be kept and made available to ODECMP, USDA, and/or any other approved auditors for 3 years plus the current fiscal year. Documentation proves that the required tasks have been appropriately completed. Understanding the scope of documentation required can help sponsors see the breadth of tasks required in order to successfully and compliantly operate the CACFP. The following items must be maintained: point of service meal count records, attendance records, working menus or production records, racial and ethnic data collection and civil rights documents, eligibility documentation, staff training, site monitoring, and financial documents. Remember that the documentation must always be original source documents. If you work electronically, then the electronic record must be maintained. If you work on paper, then the paper document must be maintained, although it can be scanned and saved electronically. I'll review them one by one. The point of service is the moment in time when a child receives a reimbursable meal. The point of service meal count must be taken at this precise moment in time. This process of taking meal counts must be separate from the process of taking attendance. The attendance can't be used as the meal count or vice versa. Either head count or actual count is acceptable. As a reminder, an actual count means taking a count by name. A head count is a tally of all the children receiving reimbursable meals. When reviewing documentation, it's important that the day, month, and year is clearly listed on the meal count. The number of meals served cannot exceed the total in attendance each day. To restate the previous slide, taking attendance must be separate from taking the point of service meal count. Each child's name must be listed, first and last, to count towards attendance. Each attendance record must be dated with the month, date, and year. Attendance can be taken near the point of service, like in a cafeteria prior to going through the line. Alternately, it can be taken in separate areas where children go for activities. As the meal count cannot exceed the attendance on any day, it's important that wherever the attendance is collected, it encompasses all participants. The attendance document can either list arrival and departure times, in, out, or indicate present or absent. The following documentation must be maintained to support reimbursable meals: either a working menu or a detailed production record listing all items served for each meal. A working menu is a menu detailing exactly what was served, including substitutions. Some people call it a dirty menu. It could be what was published prior to the meal service with items crossed out that were removed and other items added that were substituted. It can also detail quantities and components served. A production record takes menu documentation a step farther. It shows by item the amount of food prepared, served, and left over. It will have information about temperatures taken, and often even the serving implement used to correctly portion the item. Like with all other documentation, sponsors must list the month, day, and year on working menus or production records. Certain details must be contained on the working menu or production record. Things like WG or WW to indicate whole grain-rich items. It also includes milk types, flavors of yogurt, and more. In addition to the working menu, supporting documentation must also be retained for all combination foods, grains, cereals, yogurt, and tofu. Commercial combination foods require CN labels or product formulation statements to validate the contribution to the meal pattern. Homemade combination foods require a standardized recipe with crediting documentation. Grains require ingredient lists or product formulation statements to validate whole grain rich or enrichment claims. Cereals and yogurts require nutrition facts labels to validate sugar content. Tofu requires nutrition facts labels to validate protein content. In addition, if there are any modifications to the meal pattern for any child, either a medical statement or a meal preference request needs to be on file. This is just a brief overview of menu documentation. Please refer to the CACFP Center Policy Manual, Chapters 9 and 10, for a more complete understanding. Each sponsor is required to retain proof of site eligibility and area eligibility. These are discussed in more detail in the CACFP At-Risk After-School Program eligibility training. For site eligibility, many receive approval through federal, state, or local government. This could be Head Start or Even Start, school district site approval, or Department of Early Learning and Care, DELC, license for childcare. If the site is not licensed or approved by a governmental agency, then alternate approval can be requested with current and satisfactory sanitation inspection within the last 12 months and current and satisfactory fire inspection within the last 24 months. In addition, area eligibility documentation must be maintained. This is NSLP school data from ODE CMP's webpage and school boundary data if required. All CACFP sponsors are required to maintain the following civil rights documents. Each sponsor must have a written civil rights complaint procedure. Sponsors are welcome to adopt ODE CMP's civil rights complaint procedure. Within the procedure is instructions for receiving civil rights complaints, including use of a civil rights complaint forms and maintenance of a complaint log. Each sponsor must complete a racial and ethnic data collection form for each site. These documents must be retained, as always, for 3 years plus the current year. In addition, the following notices must be posted or published. Each sponsor must provide participants a notice of free accommodation or language services. Many sponsors post this on their main webpage. Others put it on a bulletin board or in a handbook. Each sponsor must post the most current and Justice for All poster at each service site in a location that is visible to participants. Every sponsor must have proof that all staff with CACFP duties have been trained on how to complete those duties at a minimum annually. This must be completed prior to the staff member working in the CACFP. This is for both existing staff and new staff. Most sponsors hold an annual training with their existing staff and onboarding training with new staff. In order for the proof to be sufficient, the following must be present. Date, including month, date, and year. Agenda for the training. The name of the trainer or program if completed electronically, and the names and signatures of attendees. Please, multi-site sponsors, also remember that monitors must be trained on monitoring duties at least annually, and this must be documented in the same way. Every multi-site sponsor must complete regular site monitoring at all sites operating the CACFP. For sites who operate at least 9 months per year, 3 visits are required and must be documented. Please reference our memo dated October 30th, 2023. Monitoring for sites that operate less than 12 months a year for guidelines on sites operating less than 9 months a year. Site monitoring forms must be completed for each visit with answers listed for all questions It must be signed and dated like many other forms. Remember that site monitoring visits must be varied in the meal observed and day of the week if possible. Primarily unannounced. 2 out of 3 visits with meal observation, at least 1 unannounced visit. Regular. No more than 6 months, operating months, can elapse between visits. And conducted by someone who does not participate in regular operation of that site. One cannot review oneself. Findings and serious deficiencies, if determined, must be called and followed up on based on your organization's procedures. In addition to these vital ongoing visits, new sites operating the CACFP must have a visit prior to operation to confirm that it is fit and prepared for operation. This documentation must also be maintained. For all non-School Food Authority, non-SFA sponsors, an annual CACFP budget must be approved by ODE-CMP prior to renewal being approved for each fiscal year. This budget will list all approved budget categories. Only items listed on the approved budget may be charged to the nonprofit food service account. The rest of the items are required for all sponsors. Every sponsor must have a written CACFP financial procedure that they use to guide their nonprofit food service account. Every sponsor must also have a financial management system in which they track income and expenses for the CACFP. There needs to be a running balance on this account. If reimbursement does not cover expenses, unrestricted funds must be seen to cover the shortfall. Sponsors must also keep supporting documentation to detail purchases and bank records to support payment of expenses. Depending on the types of expenses charged, payroll and timesheet records and more may be required. As all sponsors are required to comply with federal and state procurement rules, all procurement documentation must also be kept. This would include items like product specifications, solicitations, contracts, bids, and invoices. Please refer to our Chapter 7, Financial Management of the CACFP, and Chapter 8, Procurement, in the CACFP Manual and the trainings for more information. While in the process of caring for and feeding children, documentation may not be the first thing on your mind. It is required to receive funding from the CACFP. We have just reviewed many areas in which documentation must exist. There are a few key things to remember in order for your documentation to meet the regulatory requirements. Documentation in the CACFP must be kept for 3 years plus the current year of operation. Documentation must be in the original source format. Remember, this can be the scanned original as well. Keep your documentation for everything CACFP. Disallow meals the documentation does not support. And please, never forget to put the full date on documentation. We don't know if the November 13th listed on your paperwork happened this year or 20 years ago, unless you do. There are so many organizations and programs eligible to operate the Afterschool at-risk program. That means there are many special situations that may come up. These are some common questions. What if we have an extended school day? What about the childcare sites that claim CACFP meals already? What about non-school sites? What if we're a for-profit organization? How about private and charter schools? And what if we don't meet area eligibility guidelines, but our kids are enrolled from lower income families? So what if we have an extended school day? Do we have to start after school? The intent of the program is to operate during the school year after the school day ends. If a school operates an hour longer than a traditional school day for expanded learning time, Meals may be approved to be served before the end of the school day. This is a rare situation. Each impacted sponsor should consider if meals can wait until after the school day ends, and if there will be a true benefit to serving prior. If you determine an accommodation is needed, please contact your assigned child nutrition specialist to make that request. So what rules exist for sites that serve both at-risk and childcare or other CACFP meal programs? There are a couple things to be aware of. Special care must be taken for children who also participate in other CACFP programs, as the maximum overall claim per day per child for the combined CACFP programs is the same as the limit for childcare, which is 2 meals and 1 snack or 1 meal and 2 snacks per day. Total meals and snacks in excess by child must be disallowed by sponsors. At-risk after-school program attendees must also be cared for separately from childcare enrollees. This can be in a separate building or classroom. The children who impact a childcare's program reimbursement rate via their OMER must be enrolled in childcare, not just at-risk. Area eligibility determinations for at-risk program operations have no bearing on the eligibility for reimbursement for meals in childcare programs and vice versa. Meals served under the at-risk program receive reimbursement 100% at the highest or free rate, while the OMER establishes claiming percentages for childcare meals as free, reduced, or above scale by child. Attendance for childcare programs and attendance for at-risk programs have different requirements and must be kept separately. What about school district operated non-school district sites? Is that okay? Any special rules? So sites must be in the attendance boundary of eligible schools. Our school district sponsors are welcome to sponsor sites in any eligible area. Please be aware that all eligible sites are checked for safety, either through federal, state, or local approval or license for the type of site that's being operated. School district-owned schools are all checked for safety and approved for operation by government entities outside of child nutrition programs. If the site does not already have a license or approval, alternate approval must be requested through ODECMP. Being sponsored by the school district does not relieve the site from obtaining approval. Please review our at-risk eligibility training for more information. For-profit childcare center sponsors can be eligible to operate the at-risk after-school program too. For-profit childcare centers have to complete a monthly for-profit roster proving that their childcare program contains at least 25% free or reduced price eligible children. This is a minimum threshold that enables the claiming of meals. As children enrolled in at-risk programs do not submit income eligibility information, only children in the childcare program can be used to establish that threshold. If this threshold is not met during any month, then no meals can be claimed in that month in any CACFP program, including at-risk. Now let's talk about private and charter schools and other schools without defined attendance boundaries. As discussed, any approved site within the attendance boundary of a qualifying school can operate the program. Many types of schools do not have a defined attendance boundaries. These can include school types like private, charter, magnet, or alternative. While these schools can operate the National School Lunch Program and can establish site eligibility for themselves, they don't have an attendance boundary to extend that eligibility beyond their walls. Students don't come from the school's neighborhood, so their eligibility does not mean that the neighborhood is eligible. Alternately, these sites, if not eligible on their own, can also claim eligibility from a traditional school if they were within their boundary. What if area eligibility doesn't meet requirements, but your enrolled kids do? Area eligibility, based on school data, is the only way to approve an at-risk after-school site that's not also an emergency shelter. The CACFP does have an option for this site. It's called the Outside School Hours Care Program. This program is run like a child care center in the CACFP, but after school. This means all kids need to be enrolled and income statements will drive reimbursement. Please reference Chapter 20 of our center manual for more information. Thank you for attending ODE CMP's At-Risk After-School Program Operations Training. If you have further questions about at-risk after-school operations, please refer to the CACFP Center Policy Manual, Chapter 16, and the associated trainings, or as always, contact your assigned child nutrition specialist. This institution is an equal opportunity provider.